What's up, my beautiful people? Exile451 here with yet another daily dose of Reddit Happy. Going back into r/AskReddit today for some people's stories about the things that made them laugh the hardest in their entire life. So, let's get to it. Okay, so the question, in case it wasn't kind of obvious from the intro, what made you laugh the hardest in your entire life? Oh, and when my wife was picking these out, because she put together the content today, she was laughing so hard. So, let's see what she's got here. I nearly lost my mind laughing at my buddy's bachelor party. Late at night, sitting at a table after much drinking. One of his friends, who's a lawyer, shared a theory that he'd heard. All foods can be categorized into 4 food groups: sandwich, salad, soup, or ravioli. In other words, by this definition, a taco would be a sandwich, carb used to hold ingredients, open edges, whereas a calzone or Pop-Tart would be classified as a ravioli. This is obviously a ridiculous position, but most of us were used to this guy's nonsense. However, one of the other guys at the table is from New York and took issue with this. He had never met the lawyer before this weekend. Things started getting heated. The more upset at these categories the guy from New York became, the more the lawyer doubled down and gave increasingly preposterous explanations and logic. What about spaghetti, you jerk? Clearly a salad. It's tossed ingredients with a dressing. Meanwhile, the rest of us were starting to lose it at how upset the New Yorker was getting. It culminated in the guy from New York standing up out of his chair, slamming his hands against the table, and passionately screaming, "Pizza is not a freaking sandwich!" While the rest of us were crying laughing. Good times. You know, this is actually extremely funny because my wife, a friend, and I were having this discussion just a couple weeks ago, and she pulled up this thing on Tumblr that actually broke this down into the different food groups and what they all qualify as. I don't remember ravioli being one of them, but still. Oh, that's good. I'd love to have been there for that. Bosnian here. I was hoping there would be stories like this in this thread and was not disappointed. Here's mine. We've been here since the mid-90s, and while my father can speak excellent English, he has yet to really get the meaningful English sayings quite correct. But since the language of dad is universal, he insists on trying to use them often, usually incorrectly. I should also mention he calls meat flesh, since that's how it was translated back in the day. This is relevant. I was struggling at my first real job getting adjusted to working in an office after college. Worse still, my dad had a stroke and had been in the hospital, and we were all terribly worried and on edge. I was just about to try and take a lunch break when I get an announcement to come to the front desk. I'm shocked and delighted to see that it is my father, in a wheelchair, pushed by my mother, smiling with half his face and looking a bit glassy-eyed, but there all the same. I run to them and say, "Papa, you're here! Is it really you?" Now, what we think he wanted to say was, "Yes, it's me, in the flesh." What he ended up saying, with half a paralyzed face and super thick, way too loud Slavic accent was, "Yes, it is I, your father, the live meat man." Imagine this is the first thing you hear your father say after a week in the hospital. Imagine the sudden relief and incredible absurdity watching these immigrants in a posh New York fashion office drawing as much attention as possible to the lowly new intern, their daughter. I have never laughed and laughed so hard in my life. I very nearly peed myself. My mother will still mumble "meat man" at me during times when we're supposed to be serious, like prayers, and I always immediately lose composure and laugh. Just so you know, he's in good health to this day, still mangling all kinds of English phrases, and still a great source of joy and amusement to his family. Edit, I am delighted that you all enjoyed this story. I must tell you the postscript. After telling my father about telling the story to internet friends, he doesn't quite get Reddit, he said, "Oh yeah, I remember that. What did I call myself? Man of meat and blood?" Which I think is even better. He told me to say hi for him. Oh my gosh. I can just see that. Oh my gosh. Oh. That's good. Standing on the sidewalk next to one of those metal electrical boxes, my little sister is standing between me and the box facing me. She shouts, "Tag, you're it!" and spins around to run away at a full sprint. She slams into the box just like Wile E. Coyote running into a wall. I have never laughed so hard in my life. The people passing by afterward just saw a 6-year-old girl crying next to an adult laughing her butt off uncontrollably on the ground. Eventually, I composed myself and picked her up and told her she'll be alright. I felt so bad, but dang if I wasn't suppressing giggles the whole way home. It was in summer this year, actually. There was a middle-aged couple walking in front of me with ice creams. The guy obviously didn't see the step ledge on the floor coming up and tripped over it. As he tripped over, his flailing arm shoved the ice cream right into an oncoming child's forehead. The ice cream cone stayed in place for a couple of seconds before it slid off. The kid looked like a freaking unicorn. I was literally crying with laughter, and it was so hard to compose myself. You had to be there, but oh my gosh, the funniest scene of events ever. In college, my roommates and I had a fun ritual for putting away our groceries after shopping. There were so many of them, we had to find a fun way to do it. I posted myself with all the bags in the dining room and the other 4 posted in the kitchen. Then, I'd just start throwing the stuff at them. Pretty quick, I might add. It didn't matter if it was glass, milk jugs, soda, it got thrown. And they always caught it. Until one day, I threw a gallon of orange juice. They all thought someone else had it, and it ended up exploding all over the kitchen. A gallon of anything is a lot when it's suddenly all over the floor. We all started laughing while trying to clean it up. Tears and everything. But then one of my roommates looked at all of us and said, "It's a good thing it wasn't milk. Otherwise, this would have been an utter catastrophe." At that, we all broke down laughing on the ground in the orange juice. It was just too perfect. Our abs and faces hurt so much from all the laughing. In conclusion, I miss my roommates. Okay, so speaking of college roommates, that reminds me of this one story from about the time I think I was 23. And I was living in a basement apartment with 3 other guys at the time, and a couple of other guys came over to stay the night just because whatever. And this apartment happened to have a fireplace. And we just had some wood around, and it was like, I think November, because I think it was like right after my birthday. So it was finally at that point where it was cold enough that we could justify using it. Great apartment. Anywho, one of the guys who'd come over had never heard of blue darting before. Now, for those of you uninitiated, it's really just a stupid guy thing. You fart over an open flame, and because methane is flammable, it ignites and creates a bit of a small explosion, and because we're guys, we giggle at it. Anywho, so he's like, "Oh, that sounds awesome, I want to try." And so we're like, okay. So he's got like this big one stored up, and he gets on his hands and knees and kind of just pulls down his basketball shorts, so it's just, you know, his boxers there. And I've got my camera, because I want to film this, because I think it's just funny. And one of the guys puts his lighter behind him, and of course, you know, he rips it, and he gets there's a decent little explosion. But then as soon as it's done, he starts writhing on the ground, screaming, "It went back in! It went back in!" Apparently, what happened was part of his boxers had actually ignited in the process, and when his sphincter closed after it was done, the resulting sucking in of oxygen pulled in the flame with it. So he's on the ground, writhing in pain, screaming because I can't even tell this without laughing, because he just had an open flame go up his butt. I am laughing so hard, my abs are on fire, as is everyone else there. And like he puts his hand back there to check, and he pulls it out, and there's blood on it. And he's like, "My anus is bleeding." It turned out he'd scraped his knuckles on the brick, the fireplace going down, so it wasn't actually, but it was just, oh my gosh. It was one of the funniest nights I have ever had with other people. Like, seriously, it was hysterical. And if I can find the video, I might share that at one point. Because, holy crap. It was so funny. During the peak of those "what in tarnation" memes, my college buddies and I road tripped from Michigan to New Orleans for Mardi Gras during our spring break. About 10 hours in, when we were already feeling really goofy/bored from the long trip, a tire rolled across the highway in front of the car. My friend, while the tire was still crossing our path, screams, "What in tire nation?" And that stupid joke is the hardest I've ever laughed. The school near my house had closed down, so me and my 4 brothers went there pretty frequently one summer and essentially made it our personal playground. One day, we were there playing basketball, riding our skateboards and whatnot when a cop drives past the school and sees us messing around in there. Obviously, we weren't supposed to be there and we got spooked, so we bailed and went to hop the fence and run home. All my brothers can manage the fence well, and we're throwing our bikes over and trying to get the crap out of there before the cop turns the corner. He probably would have just told us to go home, but we were young and worried. As I turned to grab one of the bikes, I look over at my youngest brother, who was probably around 6 or 7 at the time. Got himself caught on the fence as he was coming down. He managed to give himself the most ultimate wedgie I've ever seen. He wasn't holding himself up on anything, but he was suspended up in the air, hanging by his underwear. All of us just stopped trying to rush home and started howling with laughter to the point where we could hardly help my screaming brother down from his wedgie. I still remember seeing his butt cheeks hanging out from his wedgie as he was crying, begging for help. Probably my favorite childhood memory. Edit, I told my brother who got the wedgie to guess what I wrote as the story that made me laugh the hardest, and he guessed it on his first try. Thanks for telling me all your wedgie escapades as well. We were camping in the Netherlands, and my little brother and I were playing on a contraption that was basically a large vertical wheel. You could stick your feet in 2 holes, and there were 2 handles to hold onto. The wheel rotates, and we were playing around on it. All of a sudden, my dad comes in and tells us to move. We're doing it all wrong. He gets on the contraption, the wrong way around, sticks his feet in the holes, and holds the handles. He quickly spins 180 degrees and is now hanging upside down. After 10 seconds or so, the panic starts to settle in whilst his feet are slowly starting to slip out of the holes, and a few seconds later, he smashes down onto the floor with an almighty knocking all the air out of his lungs. Whilst he is laying there gasping for air, my mother, little brother, and myself are laughing harder than ever before. A woman who saw it happen from the other side of the park comes rushing to my father's aid and throws us a dirty look and exclaims, "Help this poor man! How can you laugh at this?" Which completely set us off again. Oh, I have so many stories of my dad and similar things, and I know he would not really appreciate me sharing them, so I've got to bite my tongue on it. But yeah, I can relate. Non-movie/comedy related. I was in my now in-laws' house right after Thanksgiving, reading the newspaper while we had breakfast. There was an article about Thanksgiving fails with user-submitted stories. I remember this one about a sister-in-law to the submitter who was new to Thanksgiving prep, hosted the dinner at her home, but she wanted to be the woman of the house and take care of everything. It was a long-winded story as the submitter described how everyone and their sibling/aunt/granny/etc. gave all sorts of prep advice. But when I read that someone mentioned to the sister-in-law that the turkey needed to be washed, I started to giggle. When the story continued stating that the turkey came out gloriously, even if it did have a funny aftertaste, I was shaking. After the meal, the sister-in-law asked someone she respected for tips on how to better prepare in the future. The funny aftertaste was brought up. The sister-in-law said, "Well, I was told to wash it, so I wasn't sure if I should use dish soap or hand soap. So I used both to cover my bases." I laughed so hard I broke blood vessels around my eyes and looked like I had been in a fight. Oh my gosh. What? Okay, so there was this season of Worst Cooks in America, like 2 or 3, maybe 4 years ago. where at the auditions for the show, one of the contestants brought in a dish where she had incorporated Johnson & Johnson baby soap into it for inner cleansing or some bullcrap like that. And that's just reminding me of this. But, I mean, like, I'm the one in my family who does all the turkey prep, and as that person, oh my gosh, this just makes me, like, I laugh on the inside, but it also causes me physical pain to read this. Oh. Okay, I'm done. Okay, I'm tapping out. I gotta tap out. That was r/AskReddit, and if you want more funny or uplifting AskReddit content, then go ahead and check out the playlist link in the description below. Also, if you found this funny, go ahead and share it, because I know that right now, with everything going on, positivity, laughter, just anything to make you feel better, it's kind of in short supply, and I'm sure there are plenty of people that you know that could use a good laugh. Now you guys stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside if you're supposed to. I will see you all tomorrow. Until then, I'm Exile451. Stay beautiful, people.